In this video, I'll be taking this Dribbble design and coding it into a working mobile app using Flutter. So let's get started. First, we want to shout out to Arya for making this design. I'll be creating the one on the left, and we do need all of these images that are in the app so we can use them, but don't worry, I've linked them all in the description, and I've also gone ahead and created my own assets folder for you to use, which you can download. And then there's images, and then inside we have 4 images and our profile picture. So let's go ahead and start creating our app. We'll CD into the desktop and then do Flutter create travel_app. Once that's created, we'll go ahead and drag our assets folder into our travel app, then CD into our travel app, and then launch it in VS Code by doing code dot. There we go, perfect. Then we can close out of the terminal. Now what we want to do is we want to set up our emulator. I already have the emulator set up. We are going to be using, I'll be using the Pixel 6 Pro. You can use any phone you want, but do keep in mind this design's kind of long. So if you want it to look good without having to scroll, you want one of the longer screened phones, which is why I'm using the Pixel 6 Pro. We can then head on over to our lib main.dart and then hit F5 to launch our app. Now that our app is launched, it's time to clean up some stuff because we don't want this app. So what we can do is we can start at the class my app and we can actually delete all of this stuff. So we don't need it anymore. We'll make our own. So we'll go into stateless widget and then we'll just call it my app. And then instead of returning the placeholder, which as you can see is this, we're going to switch this into the material app. So material app, our material app wants a debug. Turn that off. That gets rid of the little debug at the top. And then we can also do home. And then we're going to make a home page. Now this home page we haven't created yet, so let's go ahead and do so. We're going to go over to our lib, create new folder, call this pages, and then inside here we'll make a new file called home_page.dart. We're going to import our material, and then we're going to create a stateless widget, and then this one is going to be called homepage. Oops, there we go. And then as long as everything's correct, we need to import our package for our homepage, and then we'll get some squiggles so we can just hit const to get rid of them and make sure you end it with a semicolon. Now it looks like a placeholder, so just to make sure everything looks good, we can change the placeholder to text and say good. There we go. Now obviously this looks terrible, so we want to, instead of doing a text, we actually want to return a scaffold, and then at least we have a blank, but we're on the right path. And then in the scaffold, if we take a look at the design, we don't actually have an app bar at the top. We just have our header. So we don't need to add an app bar, but what we're going to do is we're just going to start, we'll add a column, and then we'll add all of our sections to the column and create our app that way. Other than the bottom navigational bar, which we'll do at the end because it doesn't do anything anyhow. So we'll worry about it later. So let's go ahead and get started. But before we get started, an easy way to make our lives easier is we want to actually create variables that we're going to use consistently. We're going to do this with all of our colors as well as all of our text styles. That way we can just reuse that rather than writing a lot. We can write a lot up front, but then we don't have to remember it. We can just choose names. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to go up to the lib folder again, this time make a new one, create a new folder called utils, and then inside we'll call it styles.dart. You can name it whatever you want, but that's what I name it. We'll import the material again because there's some material stuff that we will use. So we want to have access to that. And then what we can do is we can start creating variables for our colors. And I actually created a style guide, which I am referencing. So what I'll do is I'll show you how to do one, and then I'll just copy over the rest. So we give it a variable var, we can call it accent because that's what the color is. And then we're going to do it a color, and then we're going to give it a hex color. And then to start, we do 0xff. This is the transparency. We don't want it to be transparent. And then we can give it the hex color, which for the accent is 18A5FD. And then we're going to get the little blue squiggly. So again, make it a constant. Now I have a few other colors. I won't make you watch through this, but essentially just hit Control Shift down and then start renaming them and then changing the hex values. All right, so here we are. We have all of our colors that we need. Accent, accent light, which is, this is the accent color. This is the accent light. Then we have our headings color, our text color, our icon, our background color, and then we have a solid white and a solid black. Of course, we could use solid white, solid black, but in case we want to change it later, it's good to have it as a variable. Next, what we'll do is we'll create some text styles, and we will be able to do the same thing, but then this way we can just reference the this is this textile, that is that textile. Now to do the textiles, it's a little bit different because we're actually going to be using a special font and we'll be actually using a Google font. So to do that, what we're going to do is Control tilde, bring up our terminal, and then we're going to add a dependency. And that dependency is to do that, Flutter pub add, and then it's Google_fonts. Now you can use whatever font you want. There's default fonts, there's other fonts that you can find online and use them, but we'll be using a Google font for this because I found one that kind of matches the design. Once you've done that, we can now use Google Fonts. Now that we have the colors done and Google Fonts installed, we can start making our own text styles. So just like before with our colors, we can start making our headings and any types of textiles that we're going to use and use often. So instead of using a text style like you would normally do, since we're using a Google font, since we've installed it, we can actually do Google Fonts and then add a period and then choose the font that you want to use. I'll be using Poppins for this design because it closely matches the font that's already used, but you can choose whatever you want. Now with Poppins, it works just like a text style. So what we can do is we can give it actual information and then use that as the style. So we're going to call a font weight. Our font weight for our headings are going to be semi-bold. So we can do font weight W600, which is semi-bold. We also have our color. We already have a color for that. It's our heading. And then we will do a font size. And for our font size for heading 1, we're going to do 20. Now, I'm not going to make you sit through these, but I'll do the other headings. All right, so here we are done with the headings. We have headings 1, 2, 3, and 4. And the only thing that really changes with them is their font size, 20, 18, 16, and 14. And then just to make it look a little nicer, we can Alt, Shift, and F to make stuff look nicer. All right, next what we're going to do is we're going to do our paragraph text. Doesn't have to be used for paragraphs, but again, just to keep it nice, we'll do one more like this, and then we'll continue and do the rest. So Google Fonts again, Poppins, because that's what we're using. This one, we don't have to add a font weight. We really just need a color, which is going to be our text color. See how easy this is when you have variables? Makes it very easy. And then of course we need the font size, and then we'll have the different font size. Our P1 is going to be a font size of 14. Now, of course, if we look at the design, we've already done the headings. This is a heading, this is a heading, this is a heading. But we do need to do the text, which we've just done, P1 here. And then we need to actually do this and this. So I have them named a little bit different, but you'll see them later when I use them. But I'll go ahead and just add the rest. All right, so I've gone ahead and updated them all. I've also switched them out from vars. You need vars for colors, but you can use textile when doing textiles, so it knows that it's a textile. And then lastly, what we're going to do is we're going to add in variables for our gaps, essentially. We'll be using sized boxes a lot, and it's easier just to use variables like everything else rather than actually typing it out every single time. So we can do a large, medium, which we'll use the most, and then we also have var small, 16, and then these have to be doubles, which is why they have the decimal points. and then we have 10 for the very small. So I actually don't even think we need a large. We won't actually use the large for 50. So we just have medium, small, and extra small. So now that we have all of our variables done, we can finally get into the coding. But by doing this, taking the extra couple minutes to set this up, it's going to make the coding go a lot quicker, which is why we wanted to do it. So we can go ahead and close out of our styles. And then just before we forget, we want to set up to be able to use our assets in the future. So to do that, we can go to our pubspec YAML. And in here, we'll scroll down until you see right here, it says to add assets to your application. What we're going to do is we're going to delete the comments and add in our own assets. And they are in assets/images. And then because we want the entire folder, you just add a slash at the end and then hit save. And then this should start grabbing your data so we can use them later. And now if you add any images in there, it will always grab all of them rather than just one or two. Cool. So we can close out of the pubspec YAML, we can close out of our main.dart, and then let's work on our home page. Now we have everything out of the way. So with our scaffold, we're going to start, and we're not going to use an app bar because there's really nothing up here. So we are going to just start coding out our body. And then with our body, because we're not using an app bar, I'll show you real quick. If we add text here, it gets hidden behind the status bar of the phone. So an easy way to stop this is by adding it in a safe area. And then now we won't, it'll actually bring it down below. So just to explain that, if we did a text now with a safe area, it brings it below the status bar, which is really good. So what we can do then is we can start building out our app. And if we look at our design, it is essentially just one full column, which many things inside. So that's what we're going to start doing. We're going to start adding in our column and then spacing out everything. So we will do that by adding in our column. And then inside the column, inside our column, we're going to have children. And then because it's taking that stuff, we need to get rid of the const because it's no longer constant. Now, there's a few ways that you can do this. You can add everything you want in this section, but it's going to get complicated. It's going to get very busy and you're going to get a little confused. What goes what? There's a lot of, look, this is already kind of what's with all these commas. So an easy way to stop that is we can start creating components and then make it elsewhere by itself and then just bring it in when we need it. So let's go ahead to our lib folder, go to new folder, and then call it components. And then inside here, we're going to start with a new file, and we're going to start with our heading section. So we'll just call this heading.dart. And we're going to import this material, and then we're going to do a stateless widget. And inside the stateless widget, we'll call it heading section. Perfect. We have a placeholder, and to check that it worked, we can do heading section and then do const. Perfect. There we go. And then it's going to want me to add the const here. So we'll do it there. And now we have the placeholder from our home page. So we can start working on our heading. Now, when looking at the heading, let's see what it is, right? It's just a row. And inside the row has three things. We have an icon, we have a column with two things of text, and then we have the notifications icon. So let's go ahead and create that. We already know what it is. So we're going to return a row, and inside this row it's going to have children, and inside this children we're going to start with what we want to do. So first, we are going to create a container because we're going to put the logo inside of this. And we already know the dimension, so I do. Its width is 50 and its height is 50. And then just so you can see what we're doing, we're going to add a color and temporarily color. We're going to add our text color. Now, as you can see, I'm trying to use a variable that we made, but we haven't added it yet. So we can click here to auto import our styles. And now we can just write text as the color and then hit save. And then now we have a square block. Perfect. Now with this, then what we want to do is we want to decorate this out. So instead of doing the decoration, the color, we're going to do a decoration, and then we're going to do a box decoration. In here, we'll add the color back so you can still see it. But now we're going to start adding more stuff. We're going to add a border radius dot circular, and then we want it to be a complete circle. So you kind of just add as much as you can until it's a complete circle. Normally I do twice whatever the size is. It's circular now. Perfect. All right, now that we've added the border radius, let's go ahead and add an image. Now this image will take a decoration image, since it's a container, and we're going to add in an image for this. And for that image, we're going to do an asset image, and then we're going to give it a string, which is going to be our assets, because that's where we put our images, remember, and then profile.png, because that's my image. And then we'll add some commas so we can space that out. And we're going to get the squiggles, so let's make it a constant. And there we go. We now have our image in a circle in a container. Now right now, and we'll come back to this in a moment, but right now we're at the full edge of our system, so we don't actually want to do that. We can space that out a little bit, but we'll come back to that. Actually, we'll do it now. We will go back to our home page, hit Control Dot, add some padding, and then we're going to call this only instead of all, and then we're going to start giving padding on the left 30, which, oh, we don't want to use 30. What do we want to use? Medium, right? And then we can do top. This would have been large, but we can do 50. And then on the right, we will do medium as well. And we're actually getting errors on this because they are const. Of course, it throws an error when we don't do const. It throws an error when we do use const. We're not supposed to. I wish it'd stop yelling at me. Perfect. But now we have the gap. Let's go back to the design real quick. We have the gap at the top and then the gap on the right. Perfect. Now we can continue our heading section. And then we have the container done. Great. Now what we want to do with this container is we kind of want the image and the text kind of be close to each other. So instead of having this container all by itself, what we're going to do is we're going to cut it out and throw it into a row. So this row is going to have a row inside of it, and then it's going to have our image. But now what we can do is inside this row, we can actually go ahead and add in our column for our other texts. And you could also add rows in here as well if you wanted to go longer, but let's just do text. And then for our first text, we're going to call it welcome. And then for the style, because we used a variable, we can just do P1, which is our paragraph 1 style. All right, there we go. We got a weird error, and sometimes it's best to just restart. Nothing was wrong. So we have our text for the welcome, but now what we can do is we can do text, and then we'll do Spellthorn, because that's my channel. And then we'll add this as a style, but instead of P1, this is actually going to be heading 3. And there we go. Now, if you look at the text right now, we want it to both be on the left side, and that's because of the column. So we can do cross-axis alignment, and then cross-axis alignment dot start. Now they're both together. And then this is what I said earlier about adding variables for our gaps. Now we can add a size box, and between the two, just to give it a little bit of extra room, and then our height, our width is going to be small. And that's just going to add a small bit of gap between. And if you need to know, that is 16. Perfect, right? Now that looks good. We're halfway done with the heading, or over half. But now we have this and this. Great. Now all we have to do is add our outside of the row. We'll close this to make it easier. Outside of this row, we want to add another, well, this time our icon. And we can use whatever icon you want, but there's a lot of icons built in. So we'll just do icon.notifications. And then we will give it a color, and that's going to be our icon color. And there we go. There's our icon. We do want to bump the size up a little bit to 28. And there we go. And then with our main row, we want to gap this out. So what we can do is we can do main axis alignment, space between. What this does is it pushes both of them out as far as possible, but that's why we had to create another row for the icon and the text. That way they stayed together, which is really cool. But there we go. We now have our heading section done. And on our main screen, it just looks like this. But now it looks like this. So we can close out of the heading. And then let's move on to the next section. So the next section is going to be this search section. We'll put it together. We'll call it just that. Search, I guess. And then we're going to do our search. So let's go to Components, right click, New File. We'll call this search.dart. We're going to import material. We're then going to do a stateless widget again. This one is called search section. And then just to make sure it's working, we're going to add a search section, comma at the end, and there's the placeholder, which means it is working. Now, the only issue here is we don't have some gap in here, and I guess we could mess with the columns later, but at least in the meantime, we're going to just add a sized box in here, and inside the sized box, we'll give it a height, and we'll call it medium. So we're going to space those out. And then because we've added a variable, we have to get rid of the const with all the children and add the const in front of our other sections. Perfect. But that's going to head and space that out for us so that we can have some spacing, and then let's start working. So just like before, we want to see how do we do the search. Well, we do the search section. It's essentially a row, and inside the row we have our text field, and then we have this button essentially. So let's go ahead and start doing that. So we will do a row. Inside this row, we are going to do a children. And then inside this children, normally you would do a text field, but I'm going to tell you right now, if you do this, you will get an error. And the reason why is anytime you have a text field, you do in a row, you want to actually add a widget to it, and that widget is expanded. And what that means is it's going to take up as much space as possible inside that row. And if you don't do that, you will get an error. And now you can see we have a text field that takes up the entire width of that. So we'll come back to the text field because it's a little complicated. Not complicated, but there's a lot to add. So what we're going to do is we will go on to the button because it's easier. So let's come down. We'll add a container, and inside this container we are going to get rid of the const. Inside constant here, oops, the const squiggles of death. Okay, inside this container we're going to create that container. So we know the height is going to be 50. Again, at least I do because I looked it up. And then we are also going to add a decoration, box decoration, and then we'll give this a color. This color is going to be our accent, and this is why I love variables, but we're getting an error. There is no accent. Why? Because we have not imported our library. Now we can, and now we have a blue square. Again, we want to give it a border radius. The border radius dot circular, and then we need to give it a radius size. This radius size is 12, and I could make that a variable. I think I use that a lot, or will use that a lot in the design, but we don't have to. And then what we want to do is give this a child, and inside is going to be an icon, and then inside that icon we're going to use an icon, and that is going to be icons. They don't exactly have the one as the design. So what we can do is we can just call it swap horiz. And that's kind of the design, except for it has arrows instead of circles. You could make your own if you want to, but it's not that big of a deal. And then we'll give it colors, and we'll give it our white. Invalid content. Okay. See, always getting yelled at, and then I add it, and then it's like, no, no, no. And there we go. We now have the button. You could technically make this a button, but I don't know what it does. So if you wanted to, you would just make the container, add a widget, and then do gesture detector. But we don't need to do that right now. So it doesn't do anything. So now that we have the button done, let's go ahead back to the text field. So text fields are great. There's just a lot to them because you can customize everything, which is fantastic, but it is going to take more than the button. So that's why I wanted to do the button first. So, and if you ever know what, if you ever want to know what they can do, you can always just highlight over it. So what we're going to do is, first things first, is it needs to be a white background. And actually, now that I think about it, we never added a background to our scaffold. So let's go back to the home page, and then we can do background color, and then that is just going to be a background. And then it doesn't change much, but it'll make it easier for us to see the white text field background. So we'll do input decoration. And then we can start filling this out. And there's a lot of stuff that we can change, which is really great. So first we're going to do a prefix icon, icons.search, and then we'll change the size probably to like 22, I think. Perfect. And then the color, this color, we're going to not make it an icon color. We want it to match the color of text. So we'll give it the color of text, like so. And then because that's a variable, now we don't need the const on expanded anymore. Great. Makes it just a little bit lighter. Obviously, if we type in here, we have this cursor, which is blue. So we can go ahead and change that just to make sure it matches our blue. And then in order to do that, there's a lot of different options. We can look through and see if we can find anything that says cursor. And I don't think so. Here we go. The cursor is actually on the text field itself, so we can do cursor color, and then we want that to be our accent color. Doesn't change much. It's very close to it, but it is there for just so we know it's there. Now, if we text, our type is black. We don't want it to be black, so we can actually change the style of our well, actually, there's two styles here. So the first style, let's add a hint text first. Hint text, we can do search destination because that's what it is. And then if we get rid of this text, oops, not that text, this text over here, it'll say search destination. But now what we want to do is style the hint text style. So hint style, and then we'll give this a style of, that is throwing an error. Argument, we want P1 because we want the style of our P1 text, not the color of our text. Perfect. And then that's our hint text. Again, if we type, it's still not the same. So we can go back to our text field and then style and then P1 style there. And now it is the same, except for it has an underline, which is weird, but we'll come back to that. And then we do not like this underline, and we also don't like that it's not white yet. So to fix that, we're going to add a thing called fill color, and we'll call it white, but that doesn't actually fill it. And the reason why is because you also have to call filled and make it true. Now it is filled white. Perfect. With all of that, now what we want to do is get rid of the border. And to get rid of the border, it's a little different. So with the border, we don't want to just do border, what is it? Input border dot none, because that does get rid of the border. But we want to add a little bit of roundedness to our search box, because that's how it is in the design. So if we get rid of the border, we can't do that. So what we want to do is we actually want to do an outline input border. And inside this, now we have the ability to do a border radius. And this border radius is going to match the same as this one, which is border radius.circular.12 or 12. Perfect. And now the only issue though is we've created another problem, and that problem is we still have the border that we did not want, and now it's even worse because it's all around. So what do we do here? Well, we can look over, well, we have border side. Great. Now we can do border side and then border side dot none, and then that is going to get rid of the outline. Perfect. So now we've gotten rid of the blue. But if you look closely, our thing is 50, and this is now bigger. It was perfect, but now it's bigger. So we're going to have to fix this as well. And to do that, we figure out where that is. And I believe it is on the text field. We actually have the ability to add padding, and it's somewhere. Is it this one? This is the only thing. You never know where to put it. All right, so it's going to be under the input decoration, and you can just cite content padding, edge insets dot, we'll do symmetry, because we at least just care about the vertical. We want the vertical to be not as bad, and then we can give it our variable as small. And then now that is shrunken back to it. Perfect. And then we do, if we look closely, it's kind of hard to see because it's white background, but there is no gap in between the button and our search box. So we can do that by adding a sized box with a width of small. See, I told you variables make life so much easier. And there we go. Our search box is now done. We have the correct text. We have a search box. We have the color. The only thing is the underline, which I don't know where that's coming from, actually. Let's see if we can fix that. All right, so I figured out how to get rid of the underline if you want to. It's actually autocorrect false and enable suggestions false. That's just kind of what you do. I'm guessing with the emulator, it looks like it's underlining it, but it's really checking to see and then going to give you other examples. So not a big deal, but now we don't have that stuff. So up to you if you want to use it. But yeah, we'll just delete it, but that's how you fix it. It's not really a broken though. So, all right, so we finished our search section. So let's go ahead and move on to our next section. So with our next section, we are going to do this recommended, not the list view yet, but just this little section right now, because we're going to use that here and here. So it's good to turn that into a component as well. So we're going to go new file. We are going to call this label section instead of an actual section, because this is what we're going to use multiple times, which is really how components work. Is if you are going to use something multiple times, it allows us to customize it once and then reuse it, which is pretty cool. And you'll see why in a moment. So we are going to do a stateless widget. Inside the stateless widget, we will call it label section. And then we're going to return a placeholder, get rid of the keyboard. And we can go ahead and add it here. So again, we're going to want some spacing in between our search and our recommended. We know a great way of doing that. Height, medium, there we go. And then we can bring in our new section, which is the label section. Oops, labels section. Why is my cap? Label section. Perfect. And then it's going to want us to do a const. Great. Now with the label section, it brought in, we have a placeholder. So let's go ahead and see what we want. This is actually pretty simple. It's really just a row, and we have text here, and then we have an icon over here. So remove the placeholder. Let's do a row. Inside that row, we're going to have children. Inside that children, we're going to have a text. That text is going to be called recommended. And then we're going to give it a style. And the style for this one is heading 1. Obviously, we need to import our style so it works. And then there we go. Then we also have the icon. It's icons dot more horiz for horizontal. And then since we're not really, well, we're going to add a color to this, and the color is going to be our icon color. So we don't need a const. Great. Perfect. And then they're spaced together, so the easiest way to do that is space them apart. Main axis alignment, space between. Throw them as far away as possible. Perfect. Now, we do want the font to be a little bit bigger, just like the other one, so we'll do size 28. And that looks good. Now, the cool thing about this is it for our section, but we're going to want to reuse this section here and here. And there's really no point in us coding them both just because the font's different. So we can actually create this component to be even better and actually take in variables to change this. So let's see how we would do that. So we go up to the top, and then what we need to do is do a final, which means this is what you're getting, it's final, and then what is it? So we'll have a string, and then we will call this just text. Doesn't matter what you call it, just as long as you understand. So, and then we're also going to do the icons are the same, so we don't really need the icon, but we do need to change the style. So we can do a text style, and then that is going to be our style. And then what we need to do, because we're creating variables here, we need to add it to the constructor. And we also want to add the required field, meaning you cannot use a label section without giving this information, otherwise it'll break. You don't necessarily have to do that. You could add in, if it's null, do something else, but I just like the required field because it's easier and it's good practice to apply it. Unless you want it to be something else, then you can do that, but we'll do it this way for now. There's many ways to code, and this is how we're doing it today. So, but there we go. We required this .text and required this .style, and now we can go ahead and use these as variables instead of hard coding. So for our text, we can add the text, and for our style, well, we can just add the style that we're bringing in. And we'll clean that up a little bit to make it nicer. So that's it. So now what we need to do is now we go back to our home page and we need to actually give it that information. So to do that, we're going to type in what are those names? Well, our text for this one can be recommended. And then for our style, well, that can be our heading 1 because that's what it was. And then we'll get rid of the const. Perfect. So essentially what this is doing, it's the exact same. It's saying, hey, I need some text and I need a style. Give me some text, in this case recommended, and give me a style. But now we could quickly change this to heading 3 if we wanted to. Let's refresh. There we go. And then heading 1 if we wanted to. Right? And it's going to switch between them. If we needed it to be a different word, we can do that as well. So now we've just made a label section to do both of our labels, our recommended and our top destination, even though they're different words and different font sizes. So it makes it a little easier. So we're done with the label section though. That was probably the easiest one. Next, we're going to move on is this list view, and we're going to call this our cards. So what we're going to do is we're going to create the list view first. So go into components, new folder, and then we will call this, not new folder, new file. And then we will call this rec. Let's do list. Let's do... What do we want to call it? We can call it list view. We can just call it recommended actually, .dart. Let's just call it recommended .dart because that's what it's going to be, is our recommended section. So we'll import our material. We'll do a stateless widget. The stateless widget is going to be called recommended. Oops, recommended. Perfect. I spelled recommended wrong. Recommended. There we go. Oh my goodness. Recommended. There we go. And then what we can do is, well, just like before, we can do a sized box with a height of medium. Technically could have just made that a whole variable, but you know, I want to know what it is. And then we'll do the const recommended and call that. Oops. Perfect. And then we need to import it. Great. And then we should see our placeholder. Perfect. Now we can continue with the recommended section. Now the recommended section is actually, part of it is just a list view, and it's going to be a horizontal list view where we can just go through the list. So that's what we're going to create. We're going to return a list view. And inside that list view, we're going to have children. And inside that children, for right now, we're just going to create, actually, we should come back to, all right, so here's what we'll do. We'll create our children, and then what we're going to do is make a new component, new file, and then this is going to be our card_rec.dart. And then we're going to import our material. And then we're going to stateless widget, a card recommended. Perfect. And then we can grab it here and then import it. Now we're going to get an error here, and I forgot. Anytime you have a list view, the list view has to have a height. And technically it's breaking off of the placeholder, but we'd want to fix this because it's going to need a height anyhow. Let's see what error we got. It's the only downside, some of these, like this doesn't make any sense to me, but it does say ungiven, unbounded height. So I was right with the height. So let's go ahead with the list view. We're actually going to give it a widget, a sized box, and then we can give it a height. Now I want the height to be 250 because that is the biggest that my cards are going to be. So we'll do that. Size box, height 250. Now as you can see, it's getting cut off with the placeholder, which is fine, but now we don't have that error. And then it wants me to add the const here, so we'll do that for now. Cool. Now we can go over our card rect and start creating this. Now the card rect is really the most complicated thing in this design just because there's a lot of things in it. Not super complicated, we'll get through it, but there's a lot to it, so we want to take it step by step. So the first thing we're going to do is create the rectangle or the container. So let's do that. We'll do a container. Inside this container, we're going to have a width of 250. We're going to have a height of 200. That's wrong. Yep, those are backwards. 250 and 250. There we go. Height of 250, width of 200. And then we're going to give it a decoration. Inside this decoration, you should know by now, it's a box decoration. And then we're going to start doing this. So we're going to give it a color, and that color is actually, come back to that. We'll do a background. Let's just do the color for a moment so we can see. So we want black, just so you can see what we're building here. So here is our decoration. The width is 200, the height is 250, and it's actually stretching the whole way, which is not good because it's actually going down rather than right. And to do that, we'll go back to our list view and then switch it to scroll direction and then axis dot horizontal. Now it's going to be the right size and go the whole way. It was being stretched before. Now it's perfect. Great. And then what we can do is we can do a border radius like before. Border radius dot circular, and then the circular is radius is 26. There we go. And now this is where things are so cool actually. So what we want to do is we want to add this as an image just like before. We can do a decoration image. And then the image is going to be our asset image. And then for right now, we'll do assets, images, square 1.png. Perfect. And there is our image for our card, but it doesn't look good because it is a square and it's getting shrunk down. So what we need to do is give it a fit, and that fit is going to be a box fit.cover. And what that does is just stretch out so that everything is covered. And then we're getting the squigglies, so we'll add a const here. Perfect. Now, come back to it, but there's more stuff that we want to add here, and I'll show you why in a moment. But let's go ahead and start adding in our children, or a child. So our child is going to be a column. And then inside the column, we're going to have children. And let's go back to the reference. So here we have this right here, which is actually just by itself. And then at the bottom, we have another column. And that's what we're going to do. So we're going to use a row for this so we can make it go the whole way to the right. And then we'll do a column for these. So let's go ahead and do that. So inside of our children, we'll do a row. The row is going to have children. The child is going to be a container. And then this container is going to have decoration with a box decoration of color. The color is our accent light. There we go. And then we're going to do a border radius. And the border radius is going to be 12. And then we are actually going to, getting an error here. Oh, border radius, not a border. There we go. And then we did not give our container a size. Let's go ahead and do that. So its width is 68 and its height is 36. Great. So here it is. It's kind of hard to see, but there it is right there. And then we use the row, which is great. So we can do main axis alignment dot end, throw it over to the end. And then we want to add a control period on the container and add up some padding. And then we could do all, it's not a big deal. And we will do just 13. I don't think we have a style for 13. We could make one, but this is the only thing that uses 13, so it's not a big deal. And that's going to push it out here. Great. Now what we want to do is give our container a child, and we will do a center because we want it to be centered, and we'll do a child text, and our text is going to be we need to do a $sign, so you do that by using the backslash, then the $sign. And then we'll do 120. Great. And then we want to give this a style, and we actually made this style already. If we go back to our styles, this one is special at the P. Here we go. We've added it in. It's P price, kind of like P bold, but P price, just because, well, it's the price. And then we'll save that. Because I've added it in, we just need to refresh, and there we go. Now we can move out of the row just to make it easy. And then let's start working on the column, and the column being the column of our, so we're going to do this section, Japan Temple, and then the location. So to do that, we're going to add a column. The column is going to have children. Inside that children, we're going to just have text. We could do rows, whatever, but we'll just do text. And we'll do Japan Temple. And then Japan Temple has a special style as well. And this one is P bold. P bold. There we go. And then we are going to add one more text. This one is going to be Osaka Street, Japan. And it's going to have a style, and that style is going to be P3. It has a special one, P location. Forgot I made a special one for that as well. It's close to P3, but has to be white, so I just made a special one. So, okay. Perfect. So now, as you can see, this is centered, which looks nice, but not nice enough. And what we want to do is we want to take the column, do cross-axis alignment start. What that's going to do is throw it over to the left. And then there is some padding here, or at least it looks like there is. And the reason is because we want to add that on the main column as well. And I wonder if we can just have it here. No, we need it on both. Okay, so add it to both columns so it goes the whole way to the left. That's no problem. And then what we can do is we can add in our own padding on this child. Padding, and then we can just do, well, we'll do a few of them. So we want to add padding to the left for sure, which is going to be medium. We can get rid of the const. And now it's 30 over like we wanted it to be. Actually, we want it to be 16 over. There we go. Save again. Perfect. But now we don't want these close together, right? The rows here and this is that, but in the design, it's at the bottom. So to do this, what we can do is we can take our column and then use the main axis alignment and then space between, just like how it works with a row. Get away from each other. Same with a column, get away from each other, and it allows us to do it that way tool. Which is really nice. And then because of that, we also need some padding on the bottom, and then that will be medium. We're going to pull it up 30. All right, now that we have it done, as you can see, Japan Temple is a little hard to read. It is white text. The background's kind of bright, so it is hard to read that. Now, obviously, one quick fix is let's just change the color of the font, but we don't want to do that. But what we can do is we can actually add the ability to add a container in front of the photo and behind our text, and then make it a gradient where it'll be black at the bottom, transparency a little bit, and then go into transparent at the top. So then that way we can add a little bit darker at the bottom where the text is without affecting the whole photo and making the whole photo dark. So let's go ahead and set that up. So the easiest way to do that is right where we have our padding. What we would want to do is right click, or just click the little light bulb, control period, or click the light bulb, and then go into a container. Now, the whole thing that we just did is now the child of the container. But now we have a container that we can mess around with. So what we can do now is we can add a decoration, another box decoration. And then this time we're going to still give it the border radius. Well, actually, let's not use the border radius so I can show you. And then we'll do a gradient. And then the cool thing about the gradient is we can do a linear gradient, and we need to give it some colors. Now this is going to be an array of colors, and we can start with the colors that we're going to use. Now obviously we want it to be black and then transparent, but we want our black to also be a little bit transparent. So instead of using our variable of black, we're going to do color from RGBO, R being red, G being green, and blue, B being blue. And if we give it all zeros, that is pure black. But now we have the ability to add an opacity, like 75%, and it's going to be darker. Now it did go ahead and cover our stuff, which that's okay. It'll come back in a moment. The other color that we want to give it is going to be colors.transparent. And that allows us to have, well, a transparency. And now you can see, I'll give a const so it removes the squiggles. Oops, there we go. Oops. There we go. But now you can see we've actually added a gradient. Now this is not how we want the gradient to look. I mean, maybe you do, looks pretty cool, but we actually can now give it a begin where we want it to begin. And we actually want it to begin at the bottom center. Perfect. So now it's at the bottom, and then we want to make sure that it ends, and we want it to end at the top center. So essentially we're saying, hey, go from bottom to top with this color at the bottom and this color at the top. And then of course, because it's a container over our container, we do still have to give it the same border radius, border radius, so that it doesn't look weird, because that does look weird. So border radius, circular, border radius. Why is this not showing up? Border radius dot circular. Oh my goodness. radius dot circular. There we go. And then we want to give it the same border radius as before, which is 26, and delete the const, and then add the const here. The only downside to Flutter, you will die by const. All right, perfect. So there we go. Now it's perfectly aligned with the box shadow. We can see our Japan temple popping out, and the entire rest of the photo is not that dark. And you do have the ability to tweak this a little bit. We can make this not as dark, make it pop maybe just a little bit more, but you can play around with it. I like this version, but you can make it how you want. And then, yeah, so there we go. We now have our card. And then to test our card and our view, we can make it, oh, see, this is why you always test. We did not add a margin to our list view. So these are butt up together. So to fix that, we'll go back to the very top container and we can add a margin, not there. We can add a margin. We'll do it down here with the width and stuff. We'll add a margin, edge, insets, and then we only want to add margin on the right, and the right is going to be medium. We'll call it medium. There we go. And then we now have our list view that we can go through and scroll. But if you see, when I get to the end, we have this weird effect that kind of highlights it. And we can actually turn that off by going back to the recommended, go to our list view, and for physics, we can just do a bouncing scroll physics. I like this the most, and we'll call it const. And now what we can do is, well, it bounces, which is really nice. And even though we have a padding on it, it kind of helps the end because it just gets back into place. Really nice. Now we can take this a step further because, well, our cards are not just Japan Temple, right? They're all different cards in the photo. We have Japan Temple, we have Gapura something. So what we need to do is make it so we can use this card as a component and actually give it different information and then just type that information in. So let's go back to our card rack and do that. So just like before, we're going to start giving it some variables that we can use in the code itself rather than hard coding it. So the first one is going to be a final string, and we will call that the image. Image. The second one is going to be final string, and we can call this name. Third one, final string, and we will call it a price. And then the fourth one, final string, and we can call it location. So we've added the image, the price, the name, and then the location. And then of course we want to require these so that we have to use them. You cannot use this component without, verifying this information so that it doesn't break our application. And then here we can just copy paste them and get them. But see, the best part now is we can save that, and now we can start getting rid of our hard coded and just start adding in the variables and now deleting those lovely constants. Here we want to add a variable inside of the string. We can make this a double if you wanted to, but we'll just do a string. But to do that, we hit another $sign and then our variable, which is a price. That's how you add a variable inside of strings, since we still want to keep the $sign. And then we'll come down to here and we will do name, and then we'll come here and do location. Perfect. And now we're going to get an error on these, but this is where it's lovely. So let's delete the other two for right now. And then we will just do card recommended. And now it's already prompting us because they're required. Like, you can't not use this without filling this out. So it makes it easier for us to fill it out. So we'll do assets, images, square, 1.png. Now we have the name, which is Japan Temple. We have the price, which is 120 a night. Make sure it's a string. And then our location is going to be Osaka Street, comma, Japan. And there we go. And now because we added some other stuff, we're going to have to hard refresh. And there we go. But this is what makes it so great, because now we can take it a step further and actually do a list view builder. And list view, this is really where it shines, because list view builders is where you can just have a list of stuff and it's going to build the list view for you based on that data. So let's go ahead and do that. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go back to our lib folder, and in our lib folder, we're going to make a new folder called models, and we're going to actually create a new file, and we're going to call this destination.dart. Now this is actually going to be a class called destination. And what we're doing is we're creating a model here to saying, just like we did the other stuff that says, hey, you cannot use this component without giving this information. That's pretty much how a class works as well. So what we can do is we can create a class and start adding in information for our destination, which really we already know what it is because we just used it for this. So let's go ahead and copy this. And we can do final string image, name, price, and location. And then we can finish the class off. To do that, we have to give it a constructor. So destination, and inside this, it's price image. This dot name, this dot price, and this dot location. And there we go. We now have a class, and we're going to use this class with our list view, which is why we did it like this. But just like we did the constructor with the components, same thing with a class. Now you can close out of that. But now what we can do is we can actually create a list, and we'll do this by doing list. I'm used to writing vars. We'll do list, and then we want to tell it what type of list items are in here, and we can actually give it our destination, and that's going to import it ourselves, and then we can call this whatever we want, but we're just going to call it destinations, if I can spell it right, because it's a list of destination. It's destinations, right? A list of more than one destination. But the best part here is then inside of this list, now we can call our model or our class destination, and we can give it the information just like before. Assets, images, square1.png, name is going to be Japan Temple. Spelled that wrong. Our price is a string of 120, and our location is Osaka Street, comma, Japan. But now what we can do is we can make lists of more, and this is where our list view builder will come in handy. So let's go back to our design, and we're going to create another one. So we can do assets, images, square2.png. The name is Kapora. I'm not exactly sure what the rest says, so we'll just do Muro. The price is whatever we want it to be. Let's do 100, and the location is Tokyo Street in Japan. And just because now we know how easy it is, let's go ahead and add one more. Assets, images, square3.png, and then we'll just copy the information down here. Oops. Copy the information down here. We'll do name, Telaga. Now it's messed up my spotting. We'll do $80, and then the location is Bangnang, which I'm not sure where that is. Please let me know. Maybe it's in Japan. Cool. But now what we've done is we've created our list, and this is where we get to do, instead of a list view where we hard code the information, we can actually delete this out, and then we can actually start giving it the actual information to code it. So what we'll do is we'll delete all of our children, like so, because there's no children in a list view builder. And then we're going to switch our list view to a list view builder. We're going to give it an item count, which means how many times should we go through the list? Well, we want to go through however many destinations we have and whatever that length is. So, hey, we have 3, so now it's 3. But then what we can do is we can do the builder, item builder, and this is going to take the context and an index, and now we can loop through each index, in this case 3, and do something. So what are we going to do? Well, we're going to return our recommended, what did we call it? Our card recommended, and then we're gonna give it the information that we need. Well, what information are we going to give it? Well, we need to get the information from the destinations. So let's go var dest for short equals destinations, which is our list, but then we're going to pass our index. So every time this goes through, it's kind of like a for loop. Every time it goes through, it's going to take our destinations and it's going to start at 0. So it's going to grab the first one. Then when it's done, it's going to go through, grab the second one, then the third one. And that's going to change this number. So now we actually know which one we're on, dest, and now we can just do dest.image. And the reason why we did the model earlier is because this is very easy to read. Our image is dest.image, dest.name, dest.price, and then dest.location, right? And that is what makes it, oops, make sure you end it with a semicolon. That's what makes models and lists and the list view builder super awesome. But the best part is when you save, because now we're done. We just created as much as we want in terms of lists. And there we go. Compura Mirror, I don't think that exists. And then Telega, right? Like, and we only had to do it once and make a list. Now, normally you wouldn't hard code this data into it. You would grab this from an API. Maybe we'll do that in the future, but we have the information. So now we are done with our recommended section and our card rect section. And we can close out our styles. Now we can continue to the last kind of section. So here we have the top destination and the thing. Again, we've already taking care of this, right? We can add a sized box with a height of medium. Oops, not a menu item. And then, so now we have some padding, but then we've already made our label section for this earlier. We just have to give it a label, top destination. And then we have to give it our style, and this style is heading 2, not 1, 2. And there we go. Top destination is good to go. Now, granted, you would add more to this if these were clickable links. Obviously, you want them to do different things, but you could pass that along as well. We just don't know what they do, so we did this video is long enough, so we didn't have time to do that. But now what we're going to do is we're going to finish off with our last little section other than the menu bar. So that is these. So just like we did it up here, we're going to have to recreate these as well. So let's go ahead and do that. So our first component is going to be our, we'll just call it top.dart. We'll import our material. We will do a stateless widget. Inside this stateless widget, we'll do top, what do we call it? Top section, I think. You kind of want to recommend, yeah, we can just call this recommended, but that's fine. Top section, no big deal. And then we can bring that in to, let's just, I like calling it top, actually. We'll just call it top because it's not really a section. It is a list view. We could do top list or whatever, but you can name it whatever you want. And then we'll bring it in here, top, very short, sweet, and do a const because, well, it wants us to. Great. And now we're getting overflows because it's a placeholder, but that's fine. And now let's go ahead and see what we're going to do. Of course, we're going to do a vertical list view just like before. We already know how to do this. So let's go ahead and do list view. And then we're going to give this some children, and inside this children, we're going to give it a Well, we have to make that. So components, new folder, we'll do card top.dart, import our material. We'll then do a stateless widget. Inside that stateless widget, we're going to give it a card. We can call it card recommended. So we can do this as card top, just to keep it going. And then inside of this, what are we going to do? Well, we need to give our list view a height. This height is going to be, well, we can't give a list view height. I forgot. We have to give it a sized box that has a height. And then this height is going to be the height of our section, which is 75. Perfect. And then with our children, we're then going to do card top. And then we're going to start working on the card. Great. All right, so inside of our card, let's see what we need to do. Well, we have a white background, we have a container with an image, and then we have a column with two text blocks. Perfect. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to do a container. Just like before, not a child. This container is going to have a decoration, box decoration. You already know how to do all of this by now. That's the best thing. Like it's the same thing over and over again, right? So we can do color, and then that color is going to be our white. Perfect. Can't really see it yet because we have to give it a size. We'll give it a let's give it a size. Width is going to be 154. Height is going to be 75, like I said. There we go. What did we forget to do with our list view? Well, scroll direction and then axis dot horizontal. There we go. I don't know how well you can see this, but there is a white box there. Let's go ahead and just add our sized box in between. Give it some breathing room. Perfect. Okay. Now let's go back here. We'll do the border radius circular. This border radius is 20. Great. Inside of this, we are going to give it a child. Inside of our child, let's go back to the design. We have essentially a row with an image and a column. So our child is going to be a row, children, and then we're going to do a container because we have to add some stuff to it. So our container is going to be decoration, box decoration. I'm going to color it black so you can see it. There we go. We will give it a height of 69. A width of 69. There we go. We then have to give it a border radius. Border radius dot circular. This one is 20 as well. Perfect. And then with this container, it's kind of hard to see. We are going to add our image, and then it's a decoration image. And then for this image, we're going to do an asset image. And then for this image, we're going to give it the URL assets images square 3.png. There we go. Makes it a little bit easier to see rather than the black. We can delete the black if we want to. We do want to add a little bit of padding around this container. We can do that. We'll figure it out in a moment. Let's finish off the container. We will add a column beside the container. Not here. Yeah, that's right. We will add a column with some children, and then inside this children, like I said, we just need to add a text and a text, which is really nice. Very simple. Text. This text is going to say Telega, I think it is. And then the style is, our style is going to be our heading 4. There we go. And then we'll add another text. This text is going to say Bandung. And this is going to be our P3, our smallest one. P3. Oh, style P3. Sorry about that. There we go. And then with the column, just to make sure, we'll do main axis alignments. We'll do cross axis alignment start, just so it doesn't try to go in. There you go. It's changed just a little bit. In between these, we are going to add a sized box with a width of extra small. There we go. And then with the column, we're going to do main axis alignment center. What that's going to do is it's going to center it, as you saw, but then we still keep the start, so it starts on the left. And then we do need to add just a little bit of padding on the image. I know it's really hard to see. We could technically just do a sized box with a width of extra small. Actually, super small. We don't even have a variable for this. We just need a little bit of 6 spacing on the left. Perfect. And then because we didn't use this, right? Extra small is 10. Yeah, we needed 6. Cool. If you don't have it, just use it if it's not used often. All right, so that one is done there. What we can do now is just clean this up. And let's go back to our card top. Obviously, we're going to skip and do what we're going to do. It's it's a component. Let's make it usable. So we're going to do final string name, and then final string image, and then final string location, right? Make it super easy. And then we're going to required this dot name. Let's add a comma. There we go. And then do the rest. Image and location. Perfect. There we go. And now we can use this information here and get rid of the const. And then name is here. And location. Oops, not locale, location. Great. There we go. And add it here so it spaces out. There we go. So it still works. Great. And now with our card top, we now can add this information in. So Telega image, assets, images, square 3. .png, and then location is Bandung. What are we missing? Use const. Oh. Nope, that's not right. Use const here. Gotta love the const. Death of the const. All right. And then let's just refresh, make sure we didn't break anything. We did not. Great. Now, obviously, we want to do what we did with the cards, right? We want to make this dynamic. So to do that, what we can do is we can add in our variable. Not a variable, our list. We'll do a separate list for this. You could do the same list, but we'll just do it separate just because maybe you have 2 different lists. It's not a big deal. We're still going to grab in our destination though. We don't have to redo our model. It still works. We can do destinations equals empty array or list. Perfect. And then let's get rid of our children. Sorry. We still love you, but we don't need you here right now. And then let's switch our list view to a list view builder. Again, with the list view builder, we need an item count. This item count is going to be destinations.length, which at the moment is 0. We'll fix that in a moment. And then we need to add an item builder with a context. And now we're going to return our card top and then give it the, well, let's do it this way. Let's make a variable called dest, just like before, which is destinations.index. There we go. And now we can do our card top. And this is going to be, I already, like, there's not even data in there, and I already know what it's going to be because we did the model. I'll be honest, I've been coding for years, and I just learned how to use models. Otherwise, I would be like this, which isn't a big deal, but just the extra couple sets, it's worth it. So if you're against using models, take the extra 30 seconds to create one. It is fantastic. But a lot of apps I've made personal, they're all rocking the they would all be like this. So it just looks cleaner like this. So take the effort to do a model. All right, so we've broken it. Why? Because there's no destinations, inner destinations. So let's go ahead and add those now. No, we're going to save some time. Let's go and find where we put them. Here we go. We'll just grab all 3 of these. And let's switch them out a little bit. So we need Telega. And then we don't really care about the price because it's not seen. And then we're going to change this. And this is why I kept a different list, just because the data is a little different then. Sun guy, price doesn't matter, but you could add it. You don't, and that's where you don't have to make it required if you don't want to. You can just add it if you need to, but silly one. But we're just going to leave that information there so it doesn't break. And then we'll get rid of the, I want a third one. There isn't a third one in the design, so we can just make one. We'll just call this Japan, and then square 1. And then we'll call this Japan. And then we'll just call this, let's just call this Osaka. Sure, we'll use the castle for that one. And then this one can be 3 and 4. Perfect. And then we refresh. And we are missing one thing. Do you see the little squiggle right here? We forgot to return the card top. Don't forget the return. There we go. And that's it. And then we're almost done. We have some spacing here. It's hard to see with the white. Very hard to see with the white. But we can go back to card top. And then we just need to, on the container, just like before, add a margin. And then the margin would be right. So only right and then extra small. This one's actually 36, I think. It gets a little bit bigger. Yeah, it's 36. All right. But there we have our design. I feel like it's not as big as it's supposed to be. Looks a little off. 156. Add a const there. Because on the design, let's look at the design real quick. It goes further. Maybe my phone's just wider. I'm not sure. But we have all 3. Oh, and then we also, when we scroll, we get this little thing, so we got to turn that off. Mine looks a little bit longer, actually, but it fits 2, which looks a little bit better than just fitting 1. And then what we'll do is we need to go back to our top and then get rid of the physics, bouncing physics. We are almost done. We only have to do the bottom navigational bar, which I've saved to last because it doesn't actually do anything. But look, we have Osaka, Sungai, Telega, These work. All right, let's finish it up with our bottom navigational bar. With the bottom navigational bar, we actually do this in our home page. We can close out of everything else. And then we can do it right here under the body, which is the safe area. We can do bottom navigational bar. All right, so with the bottom navigational bar, we need to give it a bottom navigational bar. I love how Flutter works. And then this requires items. So we're going to do an array of items. And then with this array, we actually have to do more than one. You have to have at least two. So we will do bottom navigational bar item. And we are going to give it icons. Oops, we're going to give it an icon. Icons dot home. There we go. Oops. See, don't hit save unless you have more than one. It says so right here. I get in a habit of saving. So do that, and then we also need to give it a label. That is another issue, and then we can just leave the label blank. And I saved it again. So we will copy this. And then this one is Explorer. There we go. And now we have two, and then we can refresh. Great. So we have the bottom navigational bar. There's not that much spacing. If you look at our design, there's more spacing here than here. An easy way to do this is you can wrap our bottom navigational bar in a sized box and then give it a height of 94 for our design. Now it's bigger. And now what we want to do is we can add in two more. We get this one and this one. This one is going to be bookmark outline. Where are you? There we go. 3. Oh, yeah, can't see them. And then, oh, this is person underscore outline. Now we're having some issues with this. You can't really see this. It's now, these icons are white. So what we need to do is add some commas here so we can space this out. There we go. But we need to add some color to our icon. And we already know what the color is. It's going to be our icon color. And then we got to delete the const. So icon. There we go. Don't delete the commas. Copy pasting. There we go. Perfect. There we go. Now, sometimes what will happen is you'll get an issue if you have more than 3. And that is kind of an issue too. So to fix that, I mean, it's kind of fixing it now. But if you are having issues for the bottom navigational bar, you actually switch type to bottom navigational type.fixed. So if it disappears, there we go. And this actually helps too because it keeps them better, but sometimes they'll delete them altogether. So in case that happens, and then we just want to switch the first one to be blue. Oh, and we also want to remove the elevation. That has that little bar right here. It's hard to see, but we're going to remove that. And then we're also going to do a background color of our white. There we go. You could see it a little bit because of the bar, but now you can really see the white. And then we do want to switch our navigational bar to be the blue one. So we can do that just to make sure it's our correct colored. Selected item color, and then accent. Great. All right. And then with the bottom navigational bar, we did the selected item color, but we want to do the unselected item color. Unselected item color as well, and then that's going to be our icon color. That way they're dark when they're not selected, and then selected when they are. Technically, we already did the icons that color, so we could probably get away with doing it that way. Okay, that's where my mistake was. So delete them off the icon themselves, and then keep them just as a whole. And then now we have the squiggles. So that's where my mistake was. So set the selected item color as your accent and then the unselected item color as your icon color. And then there you go. We're not going to set this up to switch between them. They don't do anything. I also see my buttons are a little weird when you do click them. We could just get rid of that. But yeah, that's pretty much the design. We went through everything. It works flawless. Again, a huge shout out to Arya for making this beautiful design. Let me know in the comments if you want to see me do this side of it. You guys should be able to do this side of it. It's very straightforward, even easier than this side. But thanks for watching this video this far. If you have, please subscribe if you like it. I'll be doing a lot more of these videos, and I'll see you in the next one.